So, Michael, did you come up with the name Dr. Friday?
That band was name was actually decided long before I joined.
Uh-huh.
Uh, I joined only 5 years ago, and the band was actually around for 15 years before I joined.
Right.
Um, I believe it has something to do with, we all love the weekend, and Friday is the first day of the weekend, and we look forward to it so much.
Right.
Uh, those of us that have day jobs, um, we look forward to the weekend, and when we're performing, usually it's on a weekend when most people can go out.
Right.
Um, but we also believe that music is medicine,
Right.
and for us, it's our therapy. In fact, we need it. We only rehearse once a week, and for me, it's a comradeship. When we go to rehearse, the guys have a couple shots of tequila and smoke a couple joints
Uh-huh.
and off we go, right? And
Right.
it's just what we do on Thursday nights. We get together and it's our little bit of fun.
Cool.
And our rehearsal studio, the band has used the same rehearsal studio for 20 years now.
Wow. Wow.
So it's and it's got paraphernalia and like it's got guitars in the rafters
Uh-huh.
and like literally multiple guitars hanging from the walls and up in the rafters and bongos, congas, and all sorts of instruments all over the place,
Wow.
and posters over top of posters. It's pretty cool to see actually.
Cool. Cool. Now,
And when we do a music video, one time we decided we want to smash a couple guitars. Well, we just took a couple of them off the wall
uh-huh. Wow. Yeah. Cool.
and did that.
Wow. Wow. How's the music scene in Canada?
Um, I don't know. I'm probably not the best person to talk about the music scene in Canada.
Uh-huh.
Um, our band is a little bit different. Like we've got a lot of friends that are out playing cover songs, and they can play in the nightclubs quite frequently.
Right.
Where we are in Calgary is different than Toronto. When I was out in Toronto, which I considered to be the center of the Canadian music scene. When I was actually moving back to Calgary, I was thinking, my music career is possibly over if I move back to Calgary
Right. Yeah.
because Calgary is a completely different or Toronto's a completely different philosophy. When I was out in Toronto, when I first moved there in the 80s, somebody told me, "Oh, you're still wearing a Led Zeppelin t-shirt.
Uh-huh.
Why are you wearing somebody else's t-shirt? You're advertising for them. It should be your own band. And you shouldn't even be performing other people's music." And that was the scene in Toronto.
Right.
Like the nightclubs, they all want to be the nightclub where the next big artist was discovered,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So that's what they want. And some nightclubs have developed fame over that.
Right.
Uh, you know, so there's nightclubs where Jimi Hendrix performed or where uh, the Stones performed or Rush or all these different bands got their starts. Those are all famous nightclubs, and
Right.
everybody wants to become that. Meanwhile, in Calgary, it's a completely different situation. There's not that many good original artists to start with
Right.
because they just haven't developed the scene. There is no scene for original artists. And in fact, I've thought about doing something myself to
Right.
create that scene. In the early 90s, I had actually some really good success creating such a scene, but then I got fired from my band and
Hmm.
decided to cut my hair, and I went and worked in Siberia of all places.
Wow.
Um, yeah, and it was probably the best place for me because I never wanted to be anywhere in the public in the limelight after that embarrassing. I was right at the peak of my career, or I thought at the time.
Right. Yeah.
And getting basically publicly fired, I was like, yeah, I was so embarrassed. So
Right.
yeah,
Right.
that's where I went. And at the time, even the band that fired me asked me to be their manager. And I
Hmm.
told them to fuck right off,
Wow.
basically.
Wow.
It's like, yeah, it's like, and then it was like, no, it's, Yeah.
Mhm.
Anyway, I
Well,
thought about doing that, but it would take a little bit of my own investment of time, obviously, and money, my own money. So I haven't got much time nowadays to do that, and I don't have as much money as I would like to do that either. So,
right,
and
yeah,
it would be more like of creating a nonprofit organization
right,
for original music.
right. Do you write
And
most of you write a lot of the material or not really?
everybody in the band writes our material.
Uh-huh. Good.
Um, the drummer actually writes quite a bit of lyrics
Hmm.
and music. He'll write the beat and he'll write lyrics, and then he'll go to the guitar player and says, what do you got to this that you play to this?"
Right, yeah,
A lot of our songs just materialize out of thin air.
right,
It's like um, our song "All My Love," which was my favorite song up until about a year ago. When we first came up with that song, we had actually decided amongst us in rehearsal that we were going to start working on a different idea that we had just came up with, which was Stone Hard Rocker.
right,
And we said, okay, let's try this song that we came up with last week called Stone Hard Rocker. Or it was, we called it actually something else at the time. It was never called Stone Hard Rocker right at the beginning, but forget what it was called. And then even All My Love, we actually called it, uh, what was it? We called it Hipster DC because to us, it sounded like a cross between AC/DC and the Tragically Hip.
right,
So we had that temporary song, but when we went to play the one we intended to play, well, the guitar player just started playing a completely different riff,
right.
and,
Wow,
and then we just went along with it,
wow,
and that happened. And then there was another time when we had our wives over, they're sitting out on the patio having a couple drinks under the umbrella in the sun. And we were in the rehearsal studio with the door wide open, and the guitar player brought his wireless system that day. So he
hmm,
thought, well, I'll go out and I'll solo in front of my wife.
right, yeah,
So he was just messing around like that, soloing out, like just noodling out in front of his wife and outside. And we were still in the rehearsal studio without him, and we just kept on playing. And
right, yeah.
that song developed, it developed into a song just like that. Just
Wow,
like we just kept playing.
yeah,
And that's how we write. It's every rehearsal we come up with two or three more ideas.
right, yeah. Wow.
So yeah, it's we've never had a problem with writer's block, I
Hmm.
guess.
Right,
And even last night when we rehearsed, our harmonica player couldn't make it. So we got together and we sat around and said, okay, well, this new song idea, what's the song going to be about? Do we have any idea for lyrics?
right,
And one person will spit out, well, I sort of get this from it. And one brain is better than, or five brains that all think differently is better than five brains that all think the same.
right,
So yeah, collaboratively, we can come up with lines and lyrics and lots of ideas just by collaborating and just bouncing ideas off of each other.
right, yeah.
And
Wow,
we don't have any predisposition to any kind of genre of music.
right,
It's one of the songs we came up with last night. I've never well, I should say this. I performed one country song once in my life,
right, yeah.
and it was to help a friend,
Mm,
and and it was Patsy Cline who sang. So it wasn't just a nobody.
right,
But last night one of our mates came up with a song and it sounded more like country. So nobody needs to be scared that my song idea is going to be just shoved out the door or we're not going to look at it.
right,
And then actually the other song that we're working on last night, I was like, oh my God, this to me sounds like it's the Rolling Stones.
right, yeah,
Like we're like we got a country song, we got a Rolling Stone song, and then we've got songs like Take It All that actually go more to what I like.
Right.
and
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
more to my root metal, metal background. Um, and in all of us, like the lead guitar player and myself, have a heavy metal influence from earlier in our days.
Right. Yeah.
And we have a new bass player that's sort of the same. The drummer, his favorite band, he actually, um, it was CCR was
Oh yeah.
his favorite influence,
Wow.
um, for drumming.
Yeah.
And which sort of caught me off guard when I first learned that. And our harmonica player, well, he's into the blues.
Right.
Uh, and blues is the roots of everything. So um, Zeppelin was basically just heavy blues.
Right. Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it's we don't it's very wide open, and we try to incorporate all of our influences, and we listen to each other, and it's just fun. It's just a very it's a lot of comradeship,
Right. Yeah.
companionship, right?
Yeah.
We get together. There's no politics, and if we were to focus on politics, we'd be divided. But
Yeah.
we're all there for the music, and we all support the music and the project so fully that nothing else can compare to that.
Right. Yeah. Now you have four albums out now. Did you start from the beginning with Reboot or
Um, no, well, Reboot, they actually had two albums out.
uh
They had one that was called Cruisin'
yeah,
that
that
was
came out
out
in
before.
2017?
Possibly, yes.
Yeah.
That
Uh-huh.
was before I joined the band.
Okay.
And actually, Dr. Friday, we had a Canada 150 party at my acreage here. I
Hmm.
have a couple acres here, and I designed my backyard like a sort of natural amphitheater
Uh-huh. Cool.
and built a huge stage. And I had something like 15 bands in.
Uh-huh.
And Dr. Friday was the opening band at that party I had.
Right.
And they had a female singer.
Uh-huh.
And they
Wow.
they had released that Cruisin' album. And I had a DJ from the local rock
Right.
station here, and he was broadcasting live from on location, and he chatted with me. He's like, Michael, what do you think of this singer? I really like her. And I was like, yeah, she's pretty good.
Yeah.
And in fact, that band was my favorite of the 15 bands.
Right.
And we just, about 6 months later, I learned that she left the band.
Uh-huh.
And about 7 months later, they asked me if I'd come and audition. So I did, but I never knew that they actually had another album with just a black cover, and just it was called Dr. Friday,
Uh-huh.
that was released many years before that.
Wow.
So I was completely oblivious to this. And then one of the songs so I said to the band, I said, you know what? When I heard this, when I went to their CD release party, it must have been 2017, actually. I bought two of their CDs, and I gave one to that radio station. And I was like, I just love their classic rock feel.
Right.
But I said, once I learned that this singer, their past lead singer, left, I said, you know what? There's a song on there called Buried in Time. I really want to sing that song.
Right.
I really want to release another version of that. And their most popular song off of that album was called Cruisin'. It was the title track of it. And I said, I want to sing that one. And so I ended up picking 5 songs out of that I wanted to sing. So we were able to get the actual raw tracks from their home recording system that
Hmm.
they had for these 5 songs. And I took it to the music sound engineer that I worked with, who actually, his first job as a sound engineer was working with Jimmy Page and David Coverdale
Wow.
in Little Mountain Sound in Vancouver. And he's got an Ibanez double neck guitar that's signed by Jimmy Page. Um, he was working with me, and I took it to him and I said, "Wow, we've got the bass tracks. All we really need to do is just delete the vocal tracks and re-record the vocals and remaster it and reproduce it."
Hmm.
And so we did that, and it was very cost effective. And we re-recorded those 5 songs, and we decided, since this is a new start with the band, we had a new bass player at the same time. So we had 2 new band members. This is a new start. We said, well, we're rebooting the band. Let's reboot Dr. Friday. And that's where it came from.
Cool. Cool, cool. So the first CD you laid vocals on was Soul Tonic?
No, that was reboot. That was so we redid those 5 songs with my
Right.
vocals,
Uh-huh.
and then we wrote 7 new songs and made it 12 songs on the album.
Well, so the
And
first release for you was Heart Gone Crazy?
um my first release for me would be the whole reboot album.
Cool. Okay.
So that would be, yeah, I have Buried in Time on it. Didn't See the Signs was another one of my favorite ones on that one. Um, Heart Gone Crazy would be later. So then the next one,
Uh-huh.
then the next year we released Soul Tonic,
Okay.
and that was right after COVID and
Hmm.
everything. We released that at the end of COVID. We were actually ready to release the reboot album just when COVID started.
Right, yeah.
And it delayed everything. We couldn't even get together for rehearsals
Hmm.
or anything legally, get
Yeah,
together for anything.
yeah.
Um, but then, yeah, Soul Tonic. We built off of that because, especially during COVID, we really, after not being able to get together for our weekly rehearsals, we really started to appreciate those rehearsals more.
Right,
And we felt so fortunate to have it. And we felt like music is our medicine. So it's music for the soul,
right.
and we called it Soul Tonic. And that's essentially where it came from.
Cool, cool. How hard is it to break into music at this time and stuff like that? What recommendations would you give a new band?
I don't know if my recommendations would be very good or very useful to anybody. Um, I've always sort of been at a disagreement in opinion with some of the booking agents in Calgary. Some of the booking agents in Calgary, they believe, okay, do covers, primarily covers, and then filter in, your own originals into
Right,
it. You develop a following, and you'll get exposure in the bars, and people start coming. If you're good at doing the covers, they'll get a sense of this is who you are, which covers you're doing, and you come out. But I've always felt that I don't want to be influenced by other people's music by
right,
performing that. I've always believed that whatever music I listen to or perform is going to influence my own writing.
right,
So I purposely try to be just as original as possible
right. Yeah.
with myself. And, that's where we go with Dr. Friday. Everybody's got our own influences. My original influences were, well, bands like Rush early on, Rush and the Stampeders and April Wine. But then I learned about Led Zeppelin,
Hmm.
and I really, for quite a few years, Led Zeppelin was all I would listen to. And I did listen to Queensryche, and then, about the late 80s, Queensryche was all I would listen to.
Right, yeah.
And I would be walking in Toronto, to the bus to go to rehearsal, and I'd be singing the whole Operation Mindcrime while I'm walking down the street. That's just what I was doing. In fact,
Right.
the bus stop where I had was right underneath this big high-rise building.
Mhm.
And I was singing at full volume. Like, I wasn't
Right, yeah.
holding back. I had people coming off of their balconies, off their condos, and giving me ovations.
Wow,
And a
that's
block
cool.
away, I had a Jamaican guy who actually became a really good friend of mine, who came out and he started giving me ovation, and I met him just randomly
Mhm.
a week later. It was yeah, that's right now. I guess I'm more influenced by my bandmates than anything because I've
Right.
been with them for 5 years, and since I joined Dr. Friday, they stopped doing covers.
Uh-huh.
We feel that by doing covers, you don't get the availability, the option to perform at big music festivals.
Right. Yeah.
And that's really what I crave. I've always dreamt about performing in front of 50,000 people and giving just the most ultimate performance. I used to visualize this early in my career.
Right.
On a regular, every night I would purposely visualize this. Um, so that's ultimately what my goal is, and I'm never going to achieve that if I just do covers.
Right. Yeah.
So now we're my biggest influence is my bandmates. My biggest influence is Dr. Friday.
Right.
And it doesn't matter if somebody brings a song, you know, we have our new bass player. He's brought songs to us and we said, wow, hell, we'll doctor it up.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
Well,
Yeah.
what you bring in isn't gonna be the same when it leaves.
Right. Yeah. Wow.
And that's the whole purpose, right? We
Right.
we all just we collaborate.
Wow.
So, and that's what I love. It's my drummer has complained. He says, we've got 3 albums we've released, 3 albums and 2 singles that we've released since I've joined the band.
Right.
And we just keep on writing, but we're not promoting or even performing our music live.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm going, and he's going, well, come on, we should start promoting these. We've got all this material, we've got to get it out there. And I agree, but for me, the fun is the creation of something new.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So, we've got our new bass player and he's settled in love perfectly now. It's absolutely amazing how he's settled in. Um, and now, we've been working on him on getting our portfolio or our set list tight with the new bass player. We've up and down, and we've recently done a couple new gigs, and now he's got the majority of our material he's got, so he
Right.
could perform it. We're never gonna get a chance to perform the 30 some songs we've got in our catalog
Right.
ever again. And if you play an hour and a half long set, well, we're not going to have room to play the other hour and a half.
Right. Yeah.
And now I'm saying, well, from now on, when we're writing and recording, the new material should be good enough to be able to push our other material out of our set list.
Right. Yeah.
So I just love creating and writing new material. So
Right.
I actually work as an engineer for
Mm-hmm.
my day job. And like early on, I actually gave up my career as an engineer to pursue rock and roll so much because I loved rock and roll that much.
Right. Yeah.
And but when I was about 30 some, when I went to Siberia,
Mhm.
I got dragged back into my engineering career and actually went back to school to get a degree in it.
Cool.
And now I'm just waiting to retire from engineering so I can re-pursue my music career. And I'm getting pretty close to being ready to do that, actually. But
Cool. Cool.
it's, I've got other bandmates too. It depends what happens in their careers, in where they're at. We've all got families and commitments.
Right. Yeah.
And in fact, one of my mates is a financial advisor.
Wow.
So he manages millions of dollars of other people's money.
Wow.
So he needs to be available for them to talk to him.
Right. Yeah. Wow.
So I'm going, okay, well, if we go on a tour to Europe or wherever for 3 weeks, you can have a laptop and you can still,
Right. Yeah.
we're only going to be on stage an hour and a half at
Right.
the most every day. you still can make time to talk to your clients
Right. Yeah.
if
Well,
necessary. So, and we've actually been told that there's a fairly influential music manager who is interested in taking us on when
uh-huh.
he's done with his current commitment.
Right.
And because he's got a current commitment, I can't mention who that is.
Mhm.
We're hopeful, but he has told us when the time comes within the next year, he's going to ask us a question. He's going to ask us, are you guys willing to go on tour?
Right.
And for me, it's a definite yes.
Right. Yeah.
And I feel for most of us, it is.
Yeah.
But it's just the timing of it and how to arrange it so we can all do that.
Cool. Cool.
So,
So, what do you got going for the rest of the year? Anything interesting, or you wait until next year?
um, we're performing at a nightclub in Calgary on Sunday, December 1st. Um, it's a fundraiser. Uh, they're putting it together pretty last minute here. It's a fundraiser to collect toys for Christmas for
Mhm.
underprivileged kids. And the fire department in Calgary, I understand, will be delivering the toys to the kids. So we're going to be performing that on December 1st. Um, I haven't done anything on New Year's Eve for years. I'm usually in bed hours before New Year's Eve.
So is everybody
Um,
else. Yeah.
so I don't know. We just performed at a private party a couple weeks ago for Halloween. That
Right.
was excellent. Just to a very small, group of people. We always have a blast at those kind of parties. Like it's
Right.
more relaxed, and we're not as strict with our sets. We can party a little bit ourselves and
Right.
and we had an absolute blast at that. So um, for the rest of this year, I don't anticipate much. We're trying to get an idea of what songs we're gonna in our what new material we're gonna start working on next.
Right.
So what I would like to do is, and this is only my wish, I would like to, get three or four of our up and coming new ideas, get the lyrics worked out with them, and then get some pre-production done on them.
Right. Yeah.
Start recording them and then sit back and objectively listen to them and decide, are we going to go ahead with these? And then plan to record, three or four of them fully produced songs in the new year with videos.
Right. Yeah. Good.
And, you know, maybe do a video release party or a CD release party at a big venue in Calgary.
Mhm.
Try to plan that the best we can. And of course, then next summer is the summer that we want to go out all out. We want to get in as many music festivals as possible
Cool.
next summer. We've got an audience out in British Columbia
Mhm.
where we've performed at a music festival there a few years ago, and one of the key organizers of that music festival was actually a big supporter of us. He was in the process of hooking us up with some agents and out there in music festivals. Unfortunately, last year he got diagnosed with Lou Gehrig's disease and suddenly passed away last November,
Wow.
and that was a real blow to us. Just losing this new friend. Like he was an amazing person. From the moment I met him at this music festival, he was just a friendly person.
Mhm.
He was an instant, like I said right away, as soon as I met him, I actually posted on Facebook, I have a new best friend.
Wow.
Uh, you know, and my best friend was with me at the time.
Yeah.
And I said, I have a new best friend. Like this guy is so nice.
Right.
Um, and yeah, it was so sad that he developed this disease. He was a drum tech to the Stars. He
Wow.
had been a drum tech to Alice Cooper. Um, he worked even with Kenny Rogers, um, and Burton Cummings from Canada.
Right.
He's worked with a lot of big stars, and he was a drummer, and him and my drummer became best friends
Right.
right away too. Um, so he hooked us up with a few people, and we've got some potential gigs and music festivals out in British Columbia, it's the summer playground in Canada.
Right.
It's almost like Hawaii
Hmm.
when we
Cool.
go to the Okanagan. It's very warm. Um, and there's lots of camping. You're in the Rocky Mountains.
Right.
It's very scenic. We always have a blast out there. In fact, we wrote a song about, you know, visiting with our buddy before he passed away the last time we saw him.
Right.
Um, Overlooking, sitting on top of a mountain, looking down on the lake, and just how beautiful and scenic it was. Like, and here we are. We're playing acoustic guitar and harmonica and just writing new material, just jamming, like almost like a campfire jam
Right.
on his deck. Um, every time we go out there, we meet so many amazing people. Uh, we'd love to play there again, but then we've been working with a internet radio DJ he's got a syndicated radio program.
Hmm.
It's actually more geared to country music, but not strictly country music. It's he recognizes that most country artists love rock and roll and are influenced by rock and roll.
Right.
And, as long as we're not too heavy, he does, and we're more mature, he's promoted our music actually quite a lot. And he's based out of Milan. Uh, I was actually over in Milan about a month ago, and I
Hmm.
actually met him and went for dinner with him.
Cool.
He was just as nice as I expected he would be. And he's actually found us a gig in a music festival in Lithuania that usually gets attendance of about 4,000 people.
Right. Yeah.
So he told us in November here, it's November now, expect any week now we're going to be getting a contract with that music festival. And once we get that date confirmed, we're planning to go over to do a little bit of a European tour. We've actually got a little bit of a bonus is that one of my bandmates' daughters,
Hmm.
his daughter works as a flight attendant for a pretty major airline, and she can get us very, like, unbelievably cheap flights to anywhere that airline flies.
Right. Yeah. Wow.
So we're looking at getting a flight to Rome, and then from there, once we're in Europe, we can take care of getting ourselves to Lithuania for that music festival. Of course, we love to play Germany, and Europe is quite a bit more heavier music.
Right. Yeah.
So, back when I was in a heavy metal band, that's where I wanted to go and perform. In fact, oh geez, back in the l late 80s, early 90s, I actually had an opportunity to go and become the first band from Western civilization to go play behind the Iron Curtain in Russia.
Cool. Cool. Cool.
And because my band at that time was playing pure Mozart Megadeth style.
Right. Yeah.
And we were told that the kids in Russia were desperate for anything from the West.
Right. Yeah.
And my guitar player at the time was a lot like Yngwie Malmsteen.
Wow.
Very, very similar. I actually thought he was better than Yngwie Malmsteen.
Wow.
And I said that we were called Louder Than God, actually. And
Wow.
and I had a woman. I was looking at getting Marshall amplification to sponsor us, and Marshall said, "No, no, we're not going to do that." And
Right.
I told them the story. I said, "Well, get this. A woman one time said, 'What makes you think your band is louder than God?'
Uh-huh.
And I said, 'Well, I would like to be able to answer because we use Marshall amplification exclusively.'"
Cool. 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 Cool.
And it was reeled them right in. We were looking at renting the Scorpions PA system.
Uh-huh.
I talked to the manager of Black Sabbath, and I asked him, we want the volume of Metallica and AC/DC, but we want the clarity of Supertramp.
Right.
Who's
Yeah.
got the PA that can do this?" This guy gave me the name of the manager the Scorpions manager. So
Wow.
I called him up and I said, how much would it cost to rent this?
Right. Yeah.
$250,000. Okay. And then the problem was, uh, we couldn't get any money out of Europe, out of Russia at the time. It's illegal to take the money out,
Yeah.
and it's useless even if you can. You'd be in jail for the rest of your life if you tried to take the money out. So we weren't going to get any money out of that, and but it was we were looking at some pretty big shows, and in the end, the band broke up over it.
Right. Yeah.
The guitar player decided he had different management that were wanting to take us,
Right.
and these Russians wanted to take us, and they were
Wow.
planning to bring us, get fame in Russia, and then go into the Eastern Bloc. And they owned Italian soccer teams and petrochemical companies. They were very, very. I don't know the background of these people, and that's one thing I sort of questioned. Like, how can they be so connected to the government,
Right.
to Gorbachev's government? But I've got sort of off topic here. Sorry. That was a past chance that I had a chance to be the first band to do that, and then about a year later, Yngwie Malmsteen went and played the exact same concerts that we were supposed to have played,
Wow. Wow.
and he set an all-time record, something like 15 sold-out concerts a row for 55,000 people in the
Wow.
football stadiums there.
Wow.
And I was like, that could have been us. It
Me
should have
too.
been us. It
Wow.
was when that band broke up, it was so heartbreaking to me because
Wow.
I believe that my guitar player was the best guitarist I'd ever played with.
Right.
I was told that my drummer in that band had beat Lars Ulrich out of a gig
Hmm.
to join Judas Priest, but he
Right.
got too drunk.
Wow.
And he was an amazing drummer. He was like 6'2", muscle bound
Right. Yeah.
maniac that was psychopath. He played like Neil Peart, but he was crazy.
Oh, yeah.
And that was even better for the heavy metal. He was, I just love that drummer. Like when I stood in front of his double bass, my hair was flying basically horizontal from the wind off his double kick drum.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
like, wow.
Well,
Um,
Michael, we're running out of time.
yes.
Would you like to say anything to the fans out there?
Check out our music. That's the most important thing. Dr. Friday, we feel that if you don't like our music, one song, listen to the next because they're all completely different.
Cool.
Um, we've got songs that virtually every music genre will like. We've even attempted to write a hip hop song. We're not biased against any music
Cool.
genre.
Thanks a lot,
Um,
Michael. I
thank
appreciate it.
you. Thank you.
Talk to you
Good
later.
luck. You bet. Take care.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.